Good evening, everyone. Welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is Grand Forks City Council's Committee of the Whole for Monday, April 12th. Under item 1, call to order. 1.1, welcome and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Dockler. Weber. Mock. Cavani.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Bean.
Here.
We have quorum.
Great. Under item 2, discussion items. 2.1, application for Class 3 on and off sale beer and wine alcoholic beverage license from Downtown Axe LLC, DBA, also Downtown Axe. Ms. Dorstad, good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. As President Sandy stated, the item you have before you is an application for a Class 3 liquor license, which is your on and off sale beer and wine. The business is Downtown Axe LLC. The application has been received by our office, and they are to be located at 8 South 3rd Street. This will be a 21 and over establishment, and it's a beer wine license. Issuance of new licenses requires City Council approval, and also subject to approval of various city departments, including Finance, Fire, Police, Health, City Attorney. We do have representatives if there are any questions of the business. Otherwise, we would recommend to move this forward to City Council for approval.
Any comments or questions?
I'll move approval.
Mr. Weigel moves approval. Mr. Veen seconds. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 2.2, request for commingling at special event, Cannon Inn's Tavern United for Prime Steel Cruise Night. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Sandy and members of council. It is special event season again, and our first one out here today is with Tavern United Canadians. They have taken the Prime Steel Car Club that used to be next to El Rocco when they would do their cruise nights, and they are now hosting it and hoping to give them a bigger space to actually expand on their actual car show each week. It'll start, it's actually been running for the last 2 weeks, but they have not had alcohol service outside. In fact, the person who is here, the manager for the Tavern United, has said that they want to keep the alcohol inside and food inside, but if it is requested, that's why we've come forward to make sure that we can actually have the permission to do a commingling in the parking lot.
Okay, any comments or questions? Mr. Veen?
Question, was there commingling when it was at El Rocco too?
You know, that is an event that did not participate and did not come forward with any applications. I do not know. I was told that that was on private property.
Mr. Weigel, question?
Move approval.
Moved by Weigel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kavami. Further questions? Mr. Veen?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, this is an ongoing, every week type of a thing, right?
Right, and keep in mind that Tavern United already has a Class 11 license, and they already have commingling, but they don't do it outside in the parking lot.
Where do they do it, inside?
Inside and on their patio.
Oh, on the patio where they sit outside?
Right.
But it's within the fenced area?
Right.
Simeone, so it's not actually the car club that's coming forward with the application?
It's Tavern
It's
United.
Tavern United.
And they want to be prepared if they're asked to bring alcohol into that space
Sure.
and how to control it. We have ran it through our process, and we did get a comment from the police department that they plan to, typically, we usually have off-duty police officers. They have recommended that they use sector officers that will be stopping by during the actual events, and they'll watch for it.
Okay.
And this would be on city property, right?
Correct.
The parking lot is city property.
Right. Any other comments? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simeoni. Item 2.3, application for tax incentives for Core Scientific.
Thank you. This one, I'm going to take over President Sandy
Mr. Mayor.
just to do some introductions. Thank you, council members. Mr. Pratt is going to have a presentation, then Keith Lund will take it from there. But I just wanted to bring some attention to thank a few people as well. I think the EDC and Minn Kota for bringing this opportunity forward to us several months ago on the franchise fees, opportunity to make us more competitive in a high-tech, capital-intensive business, which is asset mining and blockchain hosting. I think this really highlights the city's responsiveness and aggressive strategy, that we have this opportunity in front of us and we could possibly land $100 million plus investment right on the heels of just approving $116 million worth of development projects, and also on the heels of the Tech Accelerator getting the $1.1 million EDA grant. I think this really shows all the optimism and momentum that we have and we continue to nurture. It's of course not a done deal yet. We are still competing with other locations, and we're hoping that this will work out and will be chosen. But I wanted to give a big thank you to Keith and Brandon at the EDC for their work. Thank you to Todd and staff and City Council as well for the franchise fee move earlier, for your leadership. And thank you to Matt Marshall from Minn Kota for making this happen. Most importantly, Mr. Pratt and Mr. Fife were behind us, and the whole Core Scientific team for considering this community and making this investment. So on behalf of the Grand Forks community, welcome, and
thank you.
Podium's all yours, Mr. Pratt.
All right, thank you. Well, first I want to thank you for having me today. We've spent the last 90 days or so getting comfortable with Grand Forks as a place to expand our business. So I have a few slides, and hopefully what I'll be able to do today is get you comfortable as a council that Core Scientific can be a great partner in your community. So,
Excuse me 1 second, sir. Mr. Bean?
Apparently Katie can't get in. She's trying to get in to listen to this presentation.
Sure. Well, sir, let's just take 30 seconds.
Oh, no
See if
problem,
they
yeah.
can straighten that out. One of our council members is working on Zoom. Sir, where are you from?
Oh, I'm Jeff Pratt. Our company's headquartered in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay.
It's just about 8 miles outside of Seattle.
Sure. Isn't that the home of Microsoft?
Home of Microsoft, yeah. I worked at Microsoft for 25 years, and I've been with Core Scientific for about 2 years. So,
Sure.
Gary, would you like to introduce yourself just while we're...
Yeah, Gary Fife. I run the construction and facilities for Core Scientific. I do all designing, engineering of the buildings and airflow and electrical grid inside the building. And I work all over the country.
Sure, great.
I mean, I'm on the road 25 out of 30 days every month. So
Sorry about
I like
that.
it up here, it's my kind of town, my kind of environment, so we can get this pushed through and done.
How many computing centers do you currently have?
I have a slide on that here.
Okay, well, let's get to it. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Perfect. Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for taking some time today to learn a little bit about our company, and we're super excited about this opportunity. And before we get started, we would like to thank a lot of people in the room, worked extremely diligently and efficiently with us, and we've made tremendous progress. And like the mayor said, we're close to the finish line here, and hopefully everything will work out. So Core Scientific, we have 3 lines of business. We do digital asset mining, and you can look at some of the things on the slide, but we also do blockchain infrastructure and hosting, and we also have a new artificial intelligence business. So we're not a single-purpose company. We have a diversified portfolio. We think that's one of our strengths as a company. There actually aren't, we haven't been able to find a comparable company in the United States that has this little portfolio of products. Our company, I'll talk a little bit about our company history, but over the last 3 years, different parts of it have grown at different times, And we can, depending on where we are in the capital-intensive build-out stage, sometimes we go heavier to hosting, sometimes we go heavier into our own mining activities. And now we have this artificial intelligence solution, which is starting to show tremendous promise in a very fast-growing market. A few things here. We are the largest blockchain hosting provider in the United States, or in North America, actually. We're going to have, we've built our own proprietary fleet management software, so we can manage our data centers remotely. We have people on site, but we can monitor, manage. We put tools in the hands of our customers. They help them manage their own fleets. It's a pretty robust software solution to help the digital currency miner. I'm going to show you in the next slide, we've got a very experienced leadership team. It's not a normal startup. We're trying as a company to compete with China. Blockchain is one of the few technologies where the United States is not the leader. So our leadership team and other companies are trying to bring this industry and bring some of that market share back from China. So you'll see how we built the team to try to take on that kind of a competition. We're actually quite a few years behind, and so we're hoping to catch up quickly. This project is actually pretty key to us being able to keep up with that pace of kind of taking some market share back. We're a strong engineering culture. We have over 75 patents or applications in progress. That number is up to 85 since I created this slide. So a few things, in trying to make sure, I think for the community that you have a company that'll come in and last. We really look at this market, it's expanding, it's growing fast. Again, I said we're diversified, we're vertically integrated, we do hosting at scale. We do a lot of things that are going to be able to allow us to weather a very volatile coin market, right? And a hosting market, and to weather different changes and things in electricity and pricing. We're getting very good at our facility design. That's why Gary's here and what he's working on. But we try to find strategically located places where we have access to the needs and where the community can support us and where we can operate our facilities in good partnership with local utilities. One of the opportunities, if we do get up and running and get set up in a good and strong way here, is really on the repair and training side. We could turn our center here, if everything goes well, into a regional or a national training center or a repair center. We're the only company in North America who are authorized to do warranty repairs on Bitmain equipment, and we're also the only, it's called the Ant Academy, we're the only authorized training, so we can help teach people how to maintain these high performance computing servers. So anyway, those are two lines of business that once we get up and running, should all go well, we could have even further expansion, jobs, and opportunity here in Grand Forks. So a few things. We mentioned the team. Again, not a normal startup. If you take a look at the pedigrees of these individuals, almost everybody on the team has been Microsoft or Amazon or Morgan Stanley. I mean, a very deep, experienced leadership team trying to grow a business extremely fast and trying to bring a business from China and to compete with China. I shouldn't say bring it all back, but we are growing new things, we are competing, and we need this kind of a leadership team to manage the operations at the scale we're trying to do. So a little bit about our company. 2018, we launched our operations, and we started with blockchain hosting and infrastructure. In 2020, we grew to become the #1 in the country. And in 2021, we're going to start growing our self-mining business as well. So again, that diversified product line, all three areas at different stages of growth, each providing different opportunities for us, each providing us with some financial stability in a fast-growing, super competitive business. And you can see a couple of photos here. I'll go into the next one, but down on the bottom right, that's the inside of one of our data centers. All right, real quickly, for us to be successful, we have to have long-term power contracts. So we've been working very closely with Minn Kota to get attractive long-term power contracts. As I mentioned, we've gotten to be quite good at this, so we are able to scale quickly and get up to operational readiness in 3 to 4 months. We're hoping to be up and running here between November 2020 and 2021 and January 2022. We've got 2 facilities in Georgia. We've got 1 in Kentucky. We've got 2 in North Carolina, and we're hoping with this opportunity to have 1 here in North Dakota. So that's what I had to say. Thank you very much for your time. I am available, I guess, for questions, if anybody has any.
Thank you very much for that great presentation. Are there any questions? No, Mr. Weber? No, not yet? Okay.
All right.
Great.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. And again, the city has been absolutely fantastic to work with, so we really appreciate the business climate you guys have created here in Grand Forks, so it's been good for us. So thank you.
Thanks for, that's very good to hear. Mr. Lund, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, President Sandy, members of the council, Keith Lund, Grand Forks Region Economic Development Corporation. I completely agree with the mayor. I'm really excited. We've talked about growing tech in the community in the region for some time. With the announcement of the Tech Accelerator Grant and this potential project we're talking about tonight, some of the other discussions we've had recently, the reinvestment opportunities we've had in the community, and some of the things that are in the pipeline, I feel really excited and about the momentum that's created in this community. So this is just another example of things that are coming forward, and it feels fantastic. I want to thank Jeff and Gary for being here tonight and for considering making the investment in Grand Forks. They've been tremendous to work with, and again, excited to hopefully bring this project to fruition. Need to thank and recognize a number of the people that the mayor did, and maybe to try not to repeat him. I really want to thank Mincort as a company for having the vision to hire really a strong economic developer, Matt Marshall, who was a previous colleague running an economic development organization within West Fargo, and so he really knows the language. I kidded Mac to adding another developer to our team and paying his salary, so it's fantastic to have Matt on board, and he really worked this project. The mayor thanked a number of people in the city, but didn't thank himself, as he would not do typically. We had an opportunity to visit with leadership within this company, 24 hours notice, and the mayor, Mr. Phelan, and others came, to that meeting and really represented and promoted the community and the opportunity to make this investment, so I want to thank the mayor specifically. Mr. Brooks and Mr. Hodak really, even today, were in advance of making a final decision, talking about providing advice and really trying to understand the project before the final decisions have been made, so really appreciate their time. Bank of North Dakota is going to, if this moves forward, provide a significant amount of financing for this, so this deal doesn't get done without the Bank of North Dakota, so I think we need to recognize how fortunate we are to live in North Dakota and have that asset. Many have called that our unfair competitive advantage, so I think it's important to recognize their contribution as well. Department of Commerce, and I really want to recognize Brandon from the EDC team, who's worked very closely with the whole group, including members of the core scientific finance and tax team. So data centers, we've talked about a little bit, are highly competitive, and they're coveted by states all across the United States, and business climate is extremely important, both in terms of long-term business climate, taxation, regulation, that's extremely important, but as well as the business environment to help us start up. These types of projects are extremely capital intensive. It's a $100 million project with $100 million worth of equipment, so it's very intensive on that side of standpoint too, so they need to be very competitive. Some of the things that have been done to support some of that early stage startup is a sales and use tax exemption at the state of North Dakota, which is extremely important, and Core Scientific was tracking that very regularly. And the decision that we're asking for this evening, some of that long-term business climate, is the franchise fee discussion that you had a little while ago, but really has set the stage. I don't know that we're here, and want to thank you for leadership in passing that and creating that business environment. As we mentioned a number of times, the deal isn't inked. We all feel that we're very, very close, and tomorrow is a really important day with some key stakeholders, so keep your fingers crossed. Total of investment of $100 million, 2 buildings, 1 partially constructed, 1 that will be newly constructed, and infrastructure and specialized equipment that is needed. The plan would be to hire 22 to 25 full-time employees. The application says 12, and I believe that is when the consideration was for a single building, and this is 2, so 22 to 25 full-time employees. Also, I think we predict there'll be 60 construction jobs during the project. We believe that I want to address also financial projections within the application. There's some estimates in terms of revenue, estimates in terms of expenses, and then some net revenue. That is an EBITDA number, and so that is before interest, taxes, and amortization. Take a look at $100 million of equipment investment, and those types of things are depreciated over a 3 to 7 year time span, so you can understand how that number accelerated that quickly could eat away at those profit margins. So that's an EBITDA number. So when you actually take a look at P&L, that number is significantly reduced. Again, capital-intensive industry and need to support it from an early-stage startup standpoint. This is a significant power consumer. It's been described as another city of Grand Forks, so this is really another city of Grand Forks. You had the vision to adjust your franchise fees, and the estimates on this project alone is this would generate an additional $270,000 worth of franchise fees back to the city of Grand Forks in this one transaction, so it is in fact significant. Excuse me, going too fast without my notes. Support this project, I'm just going to get into the deal. Support this project, the company is pursuing a payment in lieu of taxes on the current structure on the Minn Kota property, as well as a new building that they're planning to constructing if they move forward of 100% for a period of 5 years. There is precedent for this type of action. $100 million has been a bit of a demarcation line for the community. About a dozen years ago, J.R. Simplot Company invested $100 million in their facility, and support was provided along these lines as well as their freezer project just a few years ago based on the impact that they have on the community. We're using the pilot because one of the buildings is partially constructed. We typically use a different vehicle, and we're using it for both buildings for the ease of the company as well as the ease of city administration, so there's just one application to really consider. So just to really quickly recap, payment in lieu of taxes, it's provided by Century Code. The authorization exists within the city, asking for a 5-year 100% exemption through a pilot. The annual tax exemption for all taxing entities is $191,000. If you break that down for the city of Grand Forks, $48,000 annual tax exemption, and then you put the $270,000 worth of annual revenue on top of that from a franchise fee standpoint. I think I've covered all my notes. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Marshall is here from Minn Kota. I'm sure that he'd be happy to answer questions as well as the principals from the company.
Thank you, Mr. Lund. Great information. Thank you all. Comments or thoughts? Mr. Veen? Yes, sir?
You talked about the power consumption, which we know is, who actually supplies the power?
The power would be from NODAC. Minn Kota is a wholesaler, generation, and
Yeah, 'cause
transition
Minnesota
company, so it'd be a customer of NODAC.
Be a customer of NODAC.
That's right.
Yep. And I know they showed a picture of it, but there was $102 million. I thought that was 102,000, but it's $102 million for the equipment inside.
That's correct. Electrical equipment and servers. Very significant.
Yeah, very.
Mr. Lund, how come this application didn't come in sooner? Why is construction already started and now we're getting the application?
Oh, sure, I'll address that, and Matt could too, but the building was actually constructed from Minn Kota for a different use.
Got it.
You actually had a similar example at a much, much smaller scale. Integrated Steel Solution purchased a building that was partially under construction and then converted it to their use as a manufacturer. Because the building had been constructed, we used the pilot. We couldn't use the typical new and expanding property tax exemption. This is the same thing, again, in a much, much higher value and a much higher scale. So for a different use, it fit their needs perfectly. They're going to be building one almost exact replica right next to it if they move forward with the project.
Great. Any other, yeah,
City
Mr.
Council
Weber?
President, Sandy, could I?
Yeah,
We
sure.
also, this City Council, I would say early in 2020, maybe in 19, you did approve, you took the caps off commercial remodeling exemption for 5 years, 100%. So that used to be capped at $1 million. So, but I think our city assessor said he feels like this is a new build and not a remodeling exemptions. Just so you know, you have, when you talk about the 5-year 100%, you've done that on any commercial remodeling exemption is provided the 5-year 100% without a cap in those cases.
Mr. Weber, comment?
Thank you, President Sandy. What I know about this deal from an economic development perspective, it seems like a no-brainer. I've asked earlier, and perhaps Mr. Marshall could address this, from an economic development perspective, this is fantastic. From a residential consumer of electricity in our community, is there any reason for concern? And my understanding is that there isn't, but perhaps Mr. Marshall could speak to that.
Sure. Thank you very much. Again, Matt Marshall, economic developer for Minnesota Power. I want to thank you for the question and also take this moment to clarify. This would be a NODAC electric customer, and they would be here. However, the president is sick tonight. Unfortunately couldn't come. I guess that's the world we live in these days. To respond to your question about would there be a concern, the answer is no. This power consumption doesn't impact any of our other power consumption negatively. It actually makes a lot of our utility resources a little more efficient. And so there's no reason that a residential customer, primarily a lot of the residents are served by not only NODAC but Excel. So of course in the case of Excel, nothing, but then for our residential customers as well, no negative impacts.
Basic supply and demand. Suddenly there's going to be this fantastic demand, seemingly limited supply, but actually this is taking advantage of excess capacity we currently have in the system.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. And we've talked about this, prior. We are a transmission constrained state, and so as a state, we generate more electricity than we can get out. Having large users actually bolsters our entire system, and that's not just us, it's all utility providers.
With that, I'll move approval to set the public hearing date for May 17th. I believe that's what we're being asked to do tonight.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Weigel. Sir, can I ask a question? Would, if we said we'd like to do 50% for 10 years instead of 100% for 5, would that be reasonable as well? The reason I'm asking is because the other local taxing entities are desperate for revenue today. And so assuming that the dollars all worked out the same, I know that the school district, for example, I know that they would, if you were in front of them, they'd be asking you to help pitch in today rather than wait till year 6. Yeah.
I can certainly take back to the leadership team and make sure it sounds like a reasonable thing we can talk through.
I think, Mr. Phelan, I don't know when...
I would only, Council President, I would only pause on that because if we go past 5 years, that means
I know we have to get their approval.
It's a lengthier process.
And I understand that. I also know that if the dollars are approximately the same, and we can just do the 5 years, I see no reason why we wouldn't just approve, for example, 5 years today. And as long as they know that, and we explain to them that we're going to do that, but they've been benevolent enough and nice enough to say that they'll go along with a 10-year 50%. A question I would have is, do we lock them in? Like that dollar value, do we lock them in today, or is it figured every year? I don't know. Mr. Hodak's not here. I'm not sure how that's calculated. Mr.
But I can address it.
Yeah, please come to the microphone, Mr. Lund.
Mr. Hodak may be online, so I would defer to him if he is.
I don't think he is.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. There he is. There you go. Mr. Hodak?
Yes, I am here. Once we establish the value would be reviewed annually, but I wouldn't anticipate much change from one year to the next once we've established a baseline.
Sure.
So in other words, there might be a small market adjustment, but other than that, the value wouldn't change much.
But in theory, if the value of their facilities are going up 2%, 3% annually, they would reap the benefit of the additional increase in their value off their 50% in year 6 and year 7, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. It might not be huge, but it's something, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hodak. So I'm not suggesting, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't have the right answer to this. We have a motion and a second on the floor. This is purely food for thought. As a matter of fact, I think we should probably move forward with setting the date, and then perhaps by the next meeting, if you come back and you have some other concepts or thoughts, we can entertain it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to come back in May and...
You don't have to come to Grand Forks although it'd be nice to have you here.
Well, we have a lot going on, I don't mind, so we
Sure.
can certainly make that happen.
Great. So I'm certainly going to support the 100% for 5 years and we could perhaps amend that. Mr. Gosted, can we amend that at the next meeting?
Sorry. Council President Sandy, as I understand, this is a recommendation from the COW that'll come up you're going to have a hearing in May 17th, so you'd be able to amend it.
Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts for the good of the order? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lund, Mr. Phelan, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for coming tonight. Item 2.4, Department Head Classification and related City Code modifications. Ms. Bovet, good evening.
Good evening, Council President Sandy and members of the committee. As you're aware, the city has two upcoming department head positions that the city administration will be seeking to fill in the near future. However, as currently written, the department head definitions section of our city code, Chapter 6, the Civil Service Code, is peppered with inaccuracies and inconsistencies, as outlined in your staff report. It is the request of city administration to have the city attorney's office draft revised language for this city code in order to correct the inconsistencies in it.
Doesn't she do it in 2 parts?
City administration would specifically like the language to provide for maintaining classification status.
Department classification.
I'm good. Nope, that's okay. City administration would specifically like the language to provide for maintaining classification status of current department heads, to identify a process to change position classifications, vacated department head positions, and to remove actual position titles from the definition of department heads, and finally, to provide for some administrative flexibility in filling those department head positions. This item is primarily being brought forward as an informational item, but also to get the city council's support and thoughts and opinions on this direction and to assist in shaping the language. City Administrator Phelan and I are available for questions.
Great. Any questions or thoughts? Mr. Weber, you look like you have something on your mind.
Sure, thank you, President Sandy. A concern that I have is an old one, goes back several months, and it's not with this administration, it's with any administration, that staff, whether they be at whatever level, including department heads, should be afforded freedom from political pressure and civil service protection. And it's my understanding that currently, even with that civil service protection, the executive as chief of the bureaucracy has the right to discipline, hire, and fire. And so this, what seems to be a move to remove some of that protection raises some level of concern for me. Can you speak to that? I don't know that that was a very good question in any way, but perhaps I made enough sense that you can give me some response.
Thank you, Councilmember Weber. I believe what you're speaking to is the classified status versus the non-classified status of department heads and the protections afforded by the Civil Service Code. Right now, as it's defined, we have various non-classified department heads and classified department heads. They're all incorrect, or there's some inaccuracies and incorrect labeling in our code. We're looking to fix that, not necessarily take or say all department heads are non-classified or define that specifically. What we could even say all department head positions are classified, but there is an ability to bring forward a recommendation to have it be a contract position and put that mechanism into the code. So we're looking to clarify the code and put into place a process for bringing that forward to City Council.
And as you said at the beginning, this is information only at this point. You're just looking for a green light for Mr. Gaustad to bring forward a proposal along the lines you've just described.
Correct.
I think Council President Sandy, our takeaway would be, what we're looking for is, Mr. Weber, what we're hearing is that you would prefer them to be classified positions as department heads, and if not, there'd have to be a reason for them not to be classified.
I think that I would agree with that.
And so we're just
yes.
looking, obviously, Mayor Brown went back and forth on this, that's hence the inconsistencies, probably without asking City Council. And now we're with a new mayor in Boczynski, and the last department head that we filled was with our building inspections director, and that was a unique position because it was a new position. But we did move forward with that as a non-classified contracted position. And so that would be the administration's preference right now. But we want to get everything corrected and then set up some sort of process so that if the council is not inclined to allow non-classified city department heads, at the very least, we want is an ability to request that from city council. But along the way, we just want to kind of get your sense of classified versus non-classified. What do you folks think about the differences? And so we have some sense before we bring this back in a couple weeks.
Indeed, if I could rewind the tape and go back to the beginning of my comments, I should have started by saying thank you for bringing this matter forward, asking for some feedback, some thoughts on this. But at this point, again, it's just a green light for the city attorney to bring forward some language for our consideration as the policymakers. Yes.
I think they were also looking for a general discussion whether we're okay with non-classified as well versus classified. I think you've mentioned that you would prefer to see people classified unless there are some additional reasons why they should be non-classified. I would go the opposite direction and
Yes.
say, I think that all of our department heads should be non-classified unless there's some special reason why they deserve the civil service protections. Beyond that, my concern, and that's, I think that's a pretty consistent statement for the last 11 years of my being on the council. I believe it's very difficult. Managing civil service and the civil service protections are very difficult for our employers, our department managers. Our department managers are very, very kind, hardworking people that don't want to put in writing if their employees aren't carrying their own weight, which makes it very hard for our mayor when push comes to shove and something needs to be done about an employee. It makes it very hard. I think that stems from the culture of the civil service system. I don't blame anyone for that. I would have a hard time with it as well. I'm sure Mr. Veen probably disagrees with me, and so I'm just one opinion. I'm certainly not suggesting that you're wrong and I'm right. That's just the way I feel about it. So, Mr. Veen, do you have any thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah, if I could, I want to go back to the purpose of this being on the agenda again. There's no action being asked tonight.
No, we're asking for your support in bringing it to the city attorney's office to rewrite this language, and then also for your feedback on the language.
And so that's what I was trying to get. Would you explain rewriting the language? I'm not quite for sure what you're trying to get to.
So the code currently labels, say, city engineer as a classified position, but that's been a contract non-classified position for about 20 years. Our PSAP director is also classified marked, indicated as classified under the city code, but has also been contract for many years. There's several position titles within the code definition of department heads that are out of date and that are no longer used. So this definition, part of the code, needs a rewrite in order to be up to date.
Or the other way is we're not following our own code.
And I would say that's probably been the case for quite some time.
Yeah, it has been, but right now, the city of Grand Forks is not following its own code by having people in a different classification than what our ordinances say. And so there's two ways of solving it. You can change the ordinance, or we can get people to be on board according to code, to our ordinances.
Well, some of the differences in the code are position titles that can change from year to year, or depending on vacancies. If we combine departments, then, like, for example, Planning and Community Development Director is currently stated as a department head in the code, but right now, we have a Planning Director and a Community Development Director. So the code does not reflect that accurately.
Right.
So my recommendation, the city administration recommendation, remove the titles from the code. So it's not inaccurate for that reason.
So the new definition that you would be wouldn't have titles anymore?
Correct. Well, I mean, department head is defined right now, I believe, as a supervisor of a department. And so that would be the definition of department head.
Yeah,
We just wouldn't outline each and every department head.
So you would have just the general definition?
General
What
definition.
you would do versus each and every one of those?
Correct.
It's applied by code.
Mr. Weigel, comment?
I'll be brief. I agree partly with what Mr. Weber's saying, and I agree partly with what you're saying. Because I do think there are career fields within the city of Grand Forks right now that are very politicized. Being in law enforcement and being within our fire department, that some of these protections that those two occupations could be very important. So I think some of these things are important, but I'd also agree with you that maybe some department heads could be non-classified, and that'd be just fine. So I think if we take an approach of maybe more so by the position and not so much by a sweeping just department heads in general, I think that might be a better approach than all for one.
Mr. Weber, no, Mr. V?
Well, I was just going to ask you, Mr. Weigel, if you don't define it, how do you identify some that are non-classified and aren't classified if you don't have a definition or describe each one and be more specific? Am I reading what you said right?
I think so. When I look at the non-classified or the classified department heads, I look at the fire chief, police chief. I'd be in support of keeping those as classified positions, but I could also see an argument somewhere else down the line where maybe the waterworks director, for just picking one off the list, may not be a classified position.
But wouldn't you have to then define that in the code so you'd know which department heads are classified and not
Yeah, and
classified?
I believe that's what Ms. Bovett and Dan would be clearing up. Is that not correct, or did I miss something?
Mr. Gusted, your thoughts?
Thank you. I've had an opportunity to speak with Tangi before tonight's meeting and Mr. Phelan as well. And the confusion arises not necessarily from the definition of what a department head is. The confusion arises as to, then you go on in that definition and it says who is supposed to be classified and who's not classified. And then there's the language at the end that says, and by the way, any supervisor of a city department employed by contract and officially designated by the mayor can be non-classified. And so, and I certainly work with the mayor and Mr. Phelan and Tangi to develop it, but my thought process is to develop a process that would be clear that you present to the council or as to how you designate somebody as classified or non-classified without specifying it with this level of precision within the ordinance, because you run into those confusions going into the future that you may call the human resource director something different in the future. And it becomes confusing at that level. So that was the thought process, is to develop some language in the code that you can develop a process for designating classified versus non-classified department heads.
Thank you, Mr. Gusted. Mr. Veen, does that answer your question?
It does.
Any other, yes, Mr. Weber?
Yes, so to go to what Mr. Gusted was just saying, the bottom of the final page looks like where you're trying to find this balance, because the 4 bullets there, maintain the position classification status of current department heads, but identify a process to change. But we want a clean process going forward so we don't end up with a hodgepodge of positions in the future again. But removing the actual titles and at the same time providing flexibility to fill these in a strategic and expedited manner. Yes. So there isn't going to be a perfect system, but we're going to look for that balance. And in the spirit of the administration seeking kind of a brainstorming conversation up here, let me respond to what Mr. Sandy said. As far as civil service rules impacting the majority of staff, that would not change with this. This would only have some impact on those that we will come up with some definition of as department heads. And you said, well, we have nice department heads who are very nice people. And I think the mayor seems to be a very nice person, but I've never seen him be at all shy about doing his job when he felt it was necessary to do so. And so I'd go back to what I said at the very beginning. Part of my concern here is that we want all 4 of these bullets, but in a fashion that doesn't lead people to be vulnerable to political pressures. As council, we do not have control over staff. That's the job of the executive. And so the information that we receive from department heads, we want it to be as objective as possible, independent of those kinds of political pressures. So with that, I just lay that out as one more aspect that I hope can be considered as you try to find the dancing balancing point between these 4 bullet points.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Well said. Any other comments? Yep, Mr. V.
Well, I know you list the city attorney and municipal judge as department heads, and they are classified, they are listed as department heads in our city code?
Yep, they are. Well, this is the definition of department heads that was brought forward. So yep, it is currently listed as a department head.
Okay, it's currently listed, okay.
Great. Do you think you got all the information you needed from us?
I think we have a way forward, thank you.
No motion is needed.
No motion needed. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Bovet. Item 2.5, appointment to library board. Any comments on item 2.5?
I'll move approval.
Moved by Weber.
Second.
Second by Weigel. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Comment.
Comment, Mr. Kavami?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment before we voted. Having a discussion with the library director, our library serves not only Grand Forks, but the whole county. And when speaking with her, it appears that other than the county commissioner that is represented on the board, there isn't any other members on the library board outside of the city of Grand Forks or that reside outside. So I just wanted to make a note that maybe we can do a little bit more going forward to advertise those board positions in the county that is served by the library, not just the city.
Thank you, Mr. Kavami. Perhaps Thompson and Northwood? Question mark? Okay. Duly noted. Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries 6-1, or 5-1. Thank you. Item 2.6, fiscal year 2022 community project funding, highway and transit member designated project request to Congressman Armstrong. Mr. Phelan.
Council President Sandy and members of the committee as a whole. I'm sorry that I added a presentation later today. This has all kind of come together in a short amount of time. Our Congress is looking at, otherwise known as earmarks. Once again, it's been 10 plus years since they did it. Last time we had an earmark that went away was for the Grand Forks Regional Water Treatment Plant back in the late 2000s, and suddenly a Great Recession hit.
Senator Dorgan left the Senate and left appropriations. So we're back to where we were probably about 12 years ago. So
Mr. Phelan, that was the wastewater treatment plant.
that was a
correct?
water treatment plant, actually.
The water treatment?
Yeah,
plant.
yep, and then we went back to the state-local partnership, so I probably been here for too long, but if you stay at it long enough, everything kind of works out in the end, so if you are persistent. I'm going to go over we have, I'm going to say we probably have an embarrassment of riches coming out of this pandemic, of all the opportunities we have to invest in Grand Forks. So hopefully we can really do this in a strategic way to invest in our community, because who would have ever thought this in March and April? I don't think anyone would have. So I just want to give you a highlight of all the opportunities that we have going forward and what kind of buckets we're all looking at about what opportunities we have. So I'll try to, and really similar to what Tanja was doing previously, I'm just trying to get some feedback because we have to submit this to Congressman Armstrong's office by a week from today at noon. So we just want to get some feedback, make sure you guys are okay with how we're prioritizing things. The first off is this American Recovery Plan Act, and this is really what the state legislature is working on, and this is what we've been pondering. So the state of North Dakota is getting a little over $1 billion from, I'm going to call it the most recent federal stimulus bill. And so as we go through the legislative session currently, the state of North Dakota knows these funds are coming. They're trying to leverage these federal funds the best we can in one-time investments, to include hopefully some that will come back to the city of Grand Forks and Grand Forks County. And we've talked about things like, our underpass at 42nd and Demers. We've talked about career academies, those sorts of things. The state of North Dakota is going through this, figuring how to leverage all that one-time money as part of the state budget. We're going to get some funds, and we talked about that. I think there's a slide. We're expected to get about $11 million of that, and so ours is coming here by no later than May. We're going to get a second half a year later. The county's going to get I think $13+ million, so they're going to get, the school district is going to schedule to get money, I think around $30 million. So all local government agencies, maybe barring the park district, we're all going to get funds, and how do we work together and really make something great happen. In the meantime, we're also probably going to get stimulus funds from the state of North Dakota for various projects too. So we'll have to see how this all shakes out come May, but it's going to come soon, and as part of that. As I said, the state legislature is still working on how they're going to distribute. I followed up with AE2S. They track what other states are doing. I'm going to give you an example of what the state of Montana. The state of Montana is going to get, I think, a little bit less than North Dakota is going to get it. And if you look at this particular slide, you can see that they're going to distribute it into one-time infrastructure projects. They're going to distribute some to their local governments. I would anticipate the state of North Dakota doing something in a similar fashion. So when we get done with the legislative session here in the next couple of weeks. Again, this is what I said, we're anticipating getting 11.3 million. The county is going to get 13.4. We're going to get it in two lump sums, some soon and some a year from now. And we really have focused on things on the fourth bullet in this area. How do we assist areas that we have gaps in, assist areas that we really have been hardest hit by COVID? And so that's where we've looked at some of our experiential economy sorts of things. We've talked in front of you, and we've talked about the Alaris Center and some master planning, whether it's turf type facilities, whether it's children's museums, whether it's BMX tracks. How do we move the needle on really moving our economy forward? So there are other things we can do with water, sewer, essential workers. We'll work through that once we get the money, but right now that's kind of where our thoughts are. Why are we looking at that? Because we have some other potential. So when I look at water, wastewater kinds of areas, we anticipate with this American Jobs Plan, otherwise known as the Biden Infrastructure Plan, that there's going to be significant investments, I would say primarily in water and wastewater infrastructure, if you look at this slide. And certainly this needs to go through a Democratic Congress of the House and Senate. And so this is right now what the Biden proposal is for this, over $2 trillion budget. So I think there's going to be money for drinking water. There's going to be water for water and stormwater. And so I think if we look at our $11 million that we have already been passed, that's why I think we can look at economic development opportunities that are allowed by federal statute, knowing that this federal infrastructure investment is going to come later, and we can look at other opportunities as we move forward. So along the way, what has happened is, the House has started this, the House has created let's look at earmarks as part of that. And I think they're doing this in anticipation of this infrastructure investment bills coming forward. What are some of the needs? And so the timelines are really tight. They're setting aside 1% of the 1.9 trillion discretionary funding. They're allowing each Congress person and each district to submit 10 projects locally, and they want all of us to kind of prioritize these projects. And of course, we have till Monday to get it submitted to Congressman Armstrong, and then thereafter, they're going to move forward as we move forward. I'm going to talk about two streams. These are the community development, I'm going to say community type projects. These are economic development projects, okay? And so and then the other next group I'm going to talk about are transportation projects as we move forward. So we looked at what are the requirements, what do they want to see in some of these earmarks. And so we really have focused a lot of our energy on the site acquisition, demolition under the first bullet. How do we get projects that are more shovel ready as we move forward? How do we look at housing and those sorts of things? We have not, I'm going to give you some examples of the second bullet with infrastructure, but I think there's going to be some other opportunities for us to look at infrastructure as we move forward. The other one is this surface transportation, and this one is a little bit different. And I'm sorry, and I've only known about these for a few days, and I don't know all the particulars. But the surface transportation earmarks are a little bit different than the community development earmarks. The community development earmarks are intended that you can obligate the funds within 1 year. And so it should be projects that you're ready to go on, and it's not a 5-year process. From what I understand in speaking with Earl Haugen of our MPO, is that the surface transportation projects are meant for, they're going to look to try to get a 5-year transportation bill completed, and the Congress has not done that for a little while. So the difference with their earmarks is that their earmarks can stay within that 5-year period of time. And so the projects I'm going to show you even include an intercity bridge. So there are some differences. And when we looked at community development projects, we looked like the here and now projects. With the surface transportation projects, we looked at over that 5-year period of time that they can be, if you get it in the authorized, if you can get a project within that 5-year period of time, you can move forward with. So there is some nuance with the surface transportation projects. So city staff, NPO, and also working with some of our consultants, we created a map with projects here. The ones in blue are the ones that we're going to talk about regarding transportation. The ones in green are 2 community development projects, and the rest of those in green are all infrastructure projects, and mainly in the wastewater and stormwater area as we looked across our city. We looked at projects that have some regional presence, that are trunk infrastructure, that serve not just one specific neighborhood, but serve us from a trunk infrastructure perspective and also from an economic development perspective. We took, trying to prioritize all these projects from water treatment plant demolition to the Lions project, to the forced main bypass, to Vale Circle flooding, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and the new South End lift station. So we took the criteria for the earmarks and tried to rank them ourselves. So this is a bit of an eye test, and this is probably a little bit of ranking these from green to red with, the proverbial gun to your head. You gotta call out what color you think it is. And so what we're recommending is, based upon this point factor system, is that we would move forward and prioritize 2 projects as part of the community development earmark process. And these projects are going to go to Congressman Armstrong, and then they're going to go to House appropriations from there. So we would prioritize the water treatment plant demolition, and we would prioritize the Lions Housing Authority project. And in your staff report, I try to describe both of those projects. We think those rank the highest because they are in our core of our downtown. They're in our low and moderate income area. They are about housing. They're about economic development. And the remaining projects are generally infrastructure related. And if I go from right to left, the force main is certainly an important project. We can look at that as part of a future infrastructure bill. The Vale Circle flooding, we have a FEMA flood mitigation grant in there, and what Mr. Grasser has told me, there's some positive signals that we might get that. So I think we can hold off on that particular one. And then the wastewater treatment plant upgrades in the south end lift station, again, I think we can wait for future infrastructure bills on that, so that we should prioritize the first two. The water treatment plant demolition would really move us forward. We have a cost range of $4 to $6 million. We're not quite sure how much demolition we're going to do because we're not quite certain of what the project we're going to pick, but we're going to kick that off. And so that's why we have that range about what does the city want to move forward as part of a development, as a part of a public-private partnership, and that'll determine how much demolition we need to do in that particular site. That site is not like a normal commercial building. It goes well into the ground with a lot of piping, and so it's not your average demolition project. The Housing Authority project, we had a visit from Terry Hansen of the Housing Authority, and what they're looking at is to provide upfront money to kick off that project. And it would be about $4 million. They'd like to contribute to that, and then to relocate their offices in the Lions development. And so there's going to be commercial space in that building. We think that's a real strategic move, that we can bring Housing Authority right next to City Hall, next to the Tech Accelerator, right in the core of our downtown. They would have office space there. They would look to probably repurpose in some form or fashion their existing offices as we move forward. It would also provide an opportunity, and I think the number we used is about 25 low and moderate income units as part of that redevelopment process too. We did engage with the developer, Northridge Construction, and they were excited about that opportunity too. So they've given us a thumbs up that they would be willing to participate as part of that project too. So those are our two priority projects on the community development side we'd like to move forward with as part of this submittal. The next one is the surface transportation prioritization. I should say on this one, there's an important asterisk. There's also going to be a letter request under the community development one, is to submit on behalf of United Way for a child care facility. And so that's an additional one that would be submitted on there as part of the community development part of that too. So I'll highlight that. And I know Mr. Senna is here from United Way. Now on the surface transportation side, this is where we took a look at that 5-year period of time. And so number one, the 42nd Street Demers Underpass, we think, and again, these are the criteria for the surface transportation, we hit a lot of greens on this project. We are seeking funding for this project currently at the state legislature, and so as part of our application process, they're going to ask, are you seeking other funding? And we're going to say, yes, we are seeking funding through our state legislature, but this process would be part of that backup as we move forward. The second one we put in is the 47th Avenue Interchange. We're in the midst of starting an EIS on that, so we think that's the second priority and the second one coming along. And then the Intercity Bridge. And we know this is a really important project to East Grand Forks. There's lots of yellows on this because we're currently doing a traffic study. I don't think we've picked a site. We haven't decided to move forward, but I'm just looking over this 5-year period of time. So again, we would prioritize from left to right, 42nd Underpass, 47th Avenue Interchange, and the Intercity Bridge are our 3 priorities. You also are asking, similar to United Way, the Grand Forks County is asking you under this category to submit a letter of support for the Merrifield Bridge construction. And that's in the county, so that's why they're requesting that. So they're asking you to move forward with that. Again, United Way Bright Futures Family Success Center, 100+ children would be, I think it's 125 plus or minus. They'd like to move forward with that project. Merrifield Bridge, an important truck bypass for us as we move forward. And really what we're asking for council feedback, do these look in the right order, the right priorities? Time is of the essence, so we will be submitting these probably by the end of the week, in advance of a week from Monday. And so there's lots of work to get done this week. In the meantime, we'll kind of see on some of these projects like 42nd Demers Underpass. Hopefully we hear good news that we're eligible for state funding, whether that funding is coming through the federal stimulus or not. But in the meantime, we want to be, what I think I'm really impressed by what we've done. is that we've done lots of master planning so that when moments come up and we're able to adapt quickly, respond within a couple of weeks and submit projects. And that's kind of where we are today and looking for some feedback before we submit on Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Great information. Is there anyone, Mr. Veen? I know you have some comments and questions.
Yeah, just a couple. Are we going to see this again, or is this final?
Yep, this is, we need to submit this Monday at 12 noon. So that's why this is it. This is kind of what we've come up with. Certainly, we'd be willing to seek input throughout the week, but again, if we were going to submit 2 projects on the community development side, we'll call it under that part, it would be water treatment plant site demolition and also Lions Development incorporation of the housing authority and related to the low and moderate income
Can you
issues.
go back to that slide?
Yeah.
Because I have a couple of questions on that. Is there a cost maximum on this one?
We know that there's 10 projects that are eligible for each congressperson. There has been some discussion of, up to a number, but they've gotten rid of that. So we're driving a little bit on autopilot and not knowing a lot of the details. We think we have reasonable projects here that we can say we can obligate the funds within 12 months of receiving word that we can do this. So we're kind of picking projects we can say we can be moving forward with these 2 particular projects.
How many, you said, we're not going to get more than 1, are we?
Well, the congressman is going to get 10 projects. I would certainly hope Grand Forks would get 1 of them.
We would like to get 1.
Yes.
So underwater treatment plant demolition, can we expand that to not only demolition, but some level of rebuilding on the site? And because the demolition is important, it's a first phase, but when we're looking at the Lions, for instance, that's demolition of what we got and the constructing of a new. Could we not do the same with the water treatment plant site and have some level of redevelopment on that site also?
Council President Sandy and Council Member Bean, the only concern I would have is that we would ask, in anticipation of further mixed-use development under a public-private partnership, one of the first steps would be to demolish the site, and that would be, help us get to that end. We don't know all the other steps, and so I always hate asking people when you can't stand at the podium and answer the questions, I have a hard time knowing what that would be, how much we'd ask for. I certainly think ultimately that water treatment plant redevelopment is going to be a $50 to $100 million redevelopment in that area, but we don't know the particulars, but we thought this would be the first in, kind of what they say with the earmarks, demolition, getting the site ready so that we can further redevelop. And I think we can hit a lot of the boxes that, the federal government's kind of want to see on the economic development side, low and moderate income units as part of the development, growing the economy in this downtown area that's in an opportunity zone in a low and moderate income area. But I don't know all those other particulars, so I'm just trying to get a winner. And I think a winner is that first step, that $4 to $6 million.
Yeah.
In a similar vein, the Lions project, that investment would be a $4 million upfront investment to locate housing authority within that facility. And so essentially what housing authority would ask to do is that we'll upfront the $4 million. So instead of paying rent over 20 years, we're going to invest upfront $4 million for, I can't remember how many square feet they want, but.
And how much was the estimated cost for the demolition at the water plant?
4 to 6.
4 to 6, okay.
And those are estimates from our construction manager and our engineers, kind of that range, depending on, to be frank, how deep we go as part of the foundation and can we build without doing that $6 million.
Mr. Phelan, do we know how Congressman Armstrong's office is going to rank these projects and pick 10?
We do not, other than please prioritize locally what your priorities are. Fill out the application. There's an attached application. And at some point, they're all going to review them and submit 10. And who knows after they submit them 10 to, the House appropriations, what happens from there.
Is there any maximum amount per project? Like, are they just asking for $500 million for flood protection in Fargo? Is that?
I think on the community development, I think They haven't set limits, but I've heard in the millions that they're looking for each earmark per project, so I don't think it's not in the 100 millions. It's probably not even I think you'd be pushing it if you asked for the tens of millions, but I think in the millions is what they're looking for.
Any other comments you have, Mr. Weigel?
Be quick, I like how all the projects are ranked, and I think it's great to support a letter, or throw a letter of support for United Way and the Child Care Center. I think that's something that's deeply needed in our community as far as childcare goes, so glad to see the 42nd Street grade separation is in there. I think that's important for our community, so thank you for the work, and hopefully we can get all of them approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Mr. Phelan, are you looking for just a thumbs up, or?
Yeah, just a general sense of what I've described seems on par, and then we'd ask Mr. Sandy that you would sign a letter with the mayor on both the United Way request and also the Grand Forks County request also.
For the Merrifield Bridge, I'll certainly sign that. I don't know if the mayor will. Yes, Mr. Weber?
Sure. First, I'll try to keep this one brief, an editorial. Earmarks in the past were a fantastic way to build collaboration among congresspeople. They had to work with one another to get to bring the pork to their district. This seems like just some guaranteed pork for your district, and we'll find out what that's all going to look like. It's a new process, so that I'll stop my editorializing there. But why the short turnaround, the short notice for council? We've known about this going back into mid-March. Is that when this first came forward?
Council President Sandy and Councilmember Weber, we got notified by Congressman Armstrong's office on Thursday that this process was moving forward. Yeah. And so probably within a week before that, we sensed something was coming, but they received work. And I would say, I think this is probably trying to organize what needs are throughout the United States of America in the individual districts up front. So I think they're probably doing this because I think there's further federal legislation, appropriations coming, and they're trying to get a sense of what is out there in each individual district. So I think this is really good proactive planning, if I can say it. And certainly, there's lots of congressional districts in the United States, and I think it's going to require them to work together and how this even works. I suspect the Senate will then have an equivalent process or somewhat an equivalent process, so they're going to have to meet on this too. I should say I heard this also, is that not every Congress person in the House has chosen to be part of this process. I'm thankful that Congressman Armstrong has elected to be part of the process. I have heard the Congresswoman on the other side of the river in Minnesota has chosen not to be part of the process. So some of these projects that go across the river might be hard to move forward when you don't have a dancing partner on the other side of the river.
Thanks for that reframe. That's important, and it's much appreciated. I also thank you for including the Vale Circle project. I've been worried about that neighborhood since that devastating flood. When was that? A year and a half ago now? But it's ranking low here, so I'm glad to hear that there might be some potential FEMA dollars. That's encouraging, but it doesn't seem like it's going to rise to one that is going to have a strong possibility here. So we have two, the water treatment plant demolition and the Lions building. It seems to me the water treatment plant project is very likely to attract developers over the next 5 years. That's one that we've been talking about for a while. Seems to be a lot of excitement around that. But I think it has even more potential if we move forward with the four big projects that we currently have in the works. And I think the Lions building could really use this kind of help to get it over the edge. So even though the scoring shows up with the Lions building in second place, they're very close. They're almost identical. My preference, both strategically long-term and in terms of all of the, not the scoring system that you've used, but in terms of all of the benefits to the community, both strategically and more immediately, I'm inclined to suggest that the Lions building be moved up ahead. But those are, it's probably a horse race between those two, and that's for the representative's office to determine. So I'm encouraged by that. It just seems like a fantastically entrepreneurial and creative approach to this opportunity. The United Way proposed childcare center, where are we looking at? Do we have a proposed
Mr. Sena's right
place?
here, I'll have him speak for himself.
That'd be great, thanks.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the council. We do have, we're kind of looking at properties in the north end, nothing's official. We're trying to find properties that would be north of 20,000 square feet. So in that area would be either a school, a church, or a hotel that we'd be looking at. So we're not really at liberty to say which ones publicly, but we do have a couple that we're trying to figure out what would work best. But we would like to find something on the north end of town where most of our clients would be there, but it would be really our United Way would move there. We have our child care center. We'd also have, excuse me, other resource centers there to include our Families First program, which is helping homeless families. We'd have our Kids Closet, other programs there. The child care center, we believe with the numbers that we're running, we could at the very least break even. So that would give us a platform on the northern end for all of our United Way programs. And then we have 130 kids that we would provide service to. We employ at least 30 new people in our community, so we think it's a great project and something we've been working on for about a year now to kind of get the planning together through our board, and just got approved through our board to do the pre-campaign step for a capital campaign. So we're trying to raise about $2.5 million to do all that we need to do. So that's kind of, but we haven't, I'd hate to say what specific properties, but we do have some that we're looking at, but we're trying to kind of see what's going to happen. We'll know more here in the next couple of months as those properties may become available.
Great. I don't need any more detail than that, thanks. But it isn't just a child care, and child care is terribly important for this community, so that's great news in and of itself. But you're talking about co-locating your offices there, so this is a social entrepreneurial activity to support the larger mission of United Way, support community needs. Anything specific or special about the child care center, or just a general child care?
Well, we'll do a child care center, but we also are looking for one of the key issues to have a gymnasium where we could have before school programs, after school programs, and also develop a community center that would operate year round, as well as good green space so that we could have interaction with senior high school students, and also the university to have sports programs, and really looking at trying to help kids have free play. And that's semi-organized, but there is a need for that, but to have something on the north end that would be at reduced cost if not free.
We need after-school programming in this community. That's as concerned as I am about childcare. I'm as excited to hear about after-school programming too. So thank you, Council President Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, Mr.
If this housing project did take place, would you specifically develop in this one, or are you looking at other sites too?
I'm not sure which, so we do have, I guess my question.
This one was it tied to the Housing Authority in Lyons?
No.
Okay.
It's an independent project.
Okay.
Personally, Mr. Weber, I think you're right on target from my point of view. Thank you, Mr. Senate, thank you so much. I think that regarding the demolition of the current water treatment plant, one way or another, we're going to get stuck paying for that demolition, whether it's in a pilot or a TIF, or whether we actually pay for it ourselves out of economic development. I believe the city's going to end up paying for that. And so getting the cash today and putting it into Lyons and moving that forward is good for Housing Authority. It's shovel ready. I think that that's strategically a much better idea for our community to get that done, knowing that one way or another, we're going to end up paying to figure out the water treatment plant anyway, so I don't think that that's neither here nor there today. We've got somebody that wants to go today. We should push that across the finish line. Again, just my opinion. I don't know how others, you've heard from two. I don't know how anybody else feels.
No, I was thinking along the same lines. It seems like, because that's something that would go immediately. It would continue that, but we were looking downtown here. Be excellent.
Great. I don't know if anyone disagrees with that. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Council President, we'll have, 1A will be Lions and 1B will be water treatment plant demolition.
Great.
And then on the transportation projects, we'll seed those in that priority.
Perfect.
And with 2 letters of support from both Mayor Bochinski and Council President Sandy.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Phelan. That was excellent. Moving forward, 2.7, Grand Forks Airport Authority request to purchase city property. Anybody want to sell the Airport Authority the property so that they can move their construction project forward? No?
I'll move approval.
Moved by Weber, second by Weigel. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2.8.
And thanks for staying so long, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Mr. Reesinger, item 2.8, agenda compilation information for other North Dakota, from other North Dakota cities. Mr. Gosted, thanks for putting that document together for us. Anybody have any questions related to how the other cities are putting their agendas together? It looks relatively straightforward, essentially very similar to what's happening in Grand Forks. Mr. Weber, are you going to push your button or not?
Thank you, President Sandy. The cities are all a little bit different, so it isn't an apples to apples comparison, but perhaps this is a matter that the committee on committees or whatever the group is, maybe they could take a look at that at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree. Mr. Gosted, something to add?
Yeah, no, I think Council President Sandy and members of the committee, what it revealed to me is what we're doing, virtually everybody else is doing the same way. And in fact, if you take a look at it, the agenda actually gets out further in advance than final action by this city council because it comes out before the committee of the whole, which then gets considered again at the following city council meeting, where most of these cities are getting it out like the Tuesday or Wednesday before their final action. So you're actually getting the agenda further in advance. The other thing that I found interesting is Bismarck doesn't even really allow for changes even at regular meetings, for the very reason we talked about, is to allow the public to know what is coming up on the agenda. If something comes up, I think they refer it down to administration to vet it before it comes back up for council consideration.
Great. Any other comments or questions? I would assume that our committee, 3-person committee, will take a look at it. Great. Moving on, item 2.9, approve purchase of an aerial fire apparatus through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contract. Anybody have any issues with the purchase? Chief, anything to add for the good of the conversation?
Move approval.
Moved by Weber.
Okay.
Second by Veen. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 210, budget amendment, fire department for grant number 43. Chief.
This is essentially a requesting a budget amendment to receive a grant from the state of North Dakota Department of Emergency Services. This is one of our annual grants that we get to for sustaining the regional response hazardous material and structural collapse teams. There is no match to this grant. It's essentially the funding from the state to help support those teams.
Move
Thank
approval.
you. Moved by Weigel, second by Veen. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Item 211, award bids for Project 8336, Public Works Concrete Rehab. Mr. Grasser, good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the Committee of the Whole. This item here, we opened bids on April 5th. The low bidder was Op Construction in the amount of $93,400. The bid was 6.9% over the engineer's estimate. I think the reason for that is that basically what this is doing is supporting a number of building operations, PD, fire, whatnot. There are a lot of small projects, and I think we basically just didn't capture all of the higher costs that go along with smaller projects. So we're satisfied with the bid. I think it looks good. Recommend award.
Thank you, Mr. Grasser. Moved by Weigel. Is there a second? Second. Second by Veen. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 212, award bids, project 8053, 2021 yard waste drop site improvements. Mr. Grasner.
Thank you. This is, again, we opened bids on April 8th. The low bidder on this one was Tony Anderson. Low bid was $321,426. This was about 10% under the engineer's estimate. Again, we're still getting some good bids on the projects. As a recap, this is the yard waste site here, right by the water tower downtown. It's expanding that site, be able to get at the containers more efficiently and allow installation of a few more containers. Also, a reminder, what we're going to do there is fix up, there's kind of a goofy spot there where we've got the sidewalk is right along the back of the curb, and the Park District kind of has a asphalt path a little farther in. We're going to combine those two. We're going to get that sidewalk out of there. It's not a good place for people to be anyway, that close to the highway or the street. So that's part of this improvement also. We'll basically move the a wider sidewalk roughly about where the asphalt path is today.
Great, thank you. Yes, Mr. Weber.
If I may, some questions about this. So right now, from Washington heading over to this site, it's one of the roughest bike paths in town. It's really broken up, and that's going to be rehabbed with another project, is that correct?
No.
Or is it going to be rehabbed with
I
this one?
apologize. I think the rough activity that you're talking about is actually is a path on the Park District property. We're going to replace that. So right now you've got that rough path that really isn't an official city path, and then the official path is the sidewalk. The sidewalk's attached right to the back of the curb. We're going to take that sidewalk out, replace the asphalt one there essentially with a wide sidewalk, new concrete sidewalk. So that'll all be basically just replaced.
All the way to Washington?
Not all the way to Washington. It goes to 12th.
Okay.
Yep.
Right behind the club there?
Yep.
Yeah.
The other sidewalk to Washington's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it is. It is. But on the south side, it's in terrible shape. That's Park District, some of that?
If you're talking about there to Washington, no, that's on public right of way. We can take a look at that.
Okay.
It's not part of this specific project. We can take a look at that.
While we're doing this, if you could take a look at that. Also, and this is going to seem, I don't know how people will feel about this because it's a garbage site. No, not garbage, it's a drop-off site for waste. I was there this weekend. I'm a frequent visitor. If you had a frequent flyer card, mine would be full. I'd be punched. This is also an important entry point to our downtown from the interstate, people coming in on Demers. And it's been rough looking. We just have dumpsters sitting there. And I believe the main purpose of this project is to clean that up, make it more efficient for users, and also it's difficult for city staff to get in there and try to pull those out. It's a long kind of bowling lane of a spot. Is there anything that can be done to beautify that spot? We're coming in under bid with even public art along there in some way. Public art can often be very creative, low cost, and attractive. But this is an important place. When I'm driving off the interstate to downtown Grand Forks, I drive right by here. Any thoughts there? Am I making these comments too late in the project?
My thought process is I think those are things that can be accomplished and followed up on. That's not part of the actual project. I think the funding that could be available to do that, there's kind of two components that are still floating out there that aren't tied directly into this construction award. And one is, I think Councilman Weigel brought it up last time about some security cameras. So that part is still kind of going on out there. I think some beautification and whatnot is another issue that we can be talking about, but it's outside the contractor paving per se. But it's still within the scope and realm of what we're looking at.
How and when would we discuss that further then?
I would have to talk with Public Works on that.
Okay. Thanks.
I think your, Council President, I think your points are noted. I think we were going to add a fence, if not with this project, at a future one, and then we'll look at other beautification items along with the security items. So I think point well made. Let's get the paving going, and in the meantime, we'll look at other aesthetic things that we can do to please up the site.
Right.
And in the meantime, it'll look like it's supposed to look like a yard site.
Right.
Right now, it's just a dead end of a street. And
With some dumpsters sitting there.
And it's the hard part with these things, everybody wants one of these near them, just don't put me too near me. And that spot is really hard to find over the years when I've looked at them.
It's a great spot for it, actually.
It is, so we'll make it look better, and I think we got a sense of the council. Let's make it look as nice as possible.
And a fence, there's fences and there's fences.
No, don't put up a chain link fence.
Don't put up, that's what I was going to say. Yes, thanks.
Don't make it look ugly.
Yeah.
Got it.
Thanks.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Grasser.
Any, Mr. Grasser, do you know, is that a collection site for brush as well?
Yes.
Or it is, great.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Should we award the bid to Op Construction? Moved by Weber, second by Weigel. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Same sign.
This one was Tony Anderson.
I'm sorry, this one was what? Tony Anderson, yes. The previous one was Up. No, that's it. Up gets them both. Okay, no, Tony Anderson, yes. Thank you. Appreciate that for they do concrete, but not that kind of concrete. Okay, item 213, award bids for project 7539, District 737 paving streetlights for Oscarville.
All right, this is Oscarville. I think enough said on that one. Again, we opened bids.
Second by me. Any other comments? Anybody curious? No. Moving on, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. I don't ever want to talk about Oscarville again. Item 214, award bids, project 8231, upgrade lift station 12 and lift station 13. Mr. Veen, any comments? Moved by Veen, is there a second? Second by Weber. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Grasser. Under informational items, item 3.1, legislative update. Mr. Bernstrom, good evening.
Mr. Sandy, members of council, the legislative session is it's wrapping up. They were hoping to be done. Mr. Phelan, correct me if I'm wrong, they're shooting for the 23rd. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but it may be in the middle of the following week. They want to save some days for redistricting. But really what they want to, they're down the conference committee now, which really takes it out of our hands a little bit. We can watch the new technology they've done at the state is really good. You can watch, but as far as giving input and testimony is pretty tough, unless you catch something right away. But there are a couple of bills still in committee. There's two bills regarding our benefits program we have, ND PERS, that are still in committee. They haven't been brought to the Senate or the House floor yet. They're on either side. They're in the Government and Veterans Affairs Committees, which both are set to meet at the end of this week. So hopefully something comes out of committee. The two bill numbers are 2046 and 1209, and that will help determine, how our PERS system is funded in the future, and then working with Tangi and HR as far as how that works. And then Mr. Phelan brought it up talking about federal funding. They did pass the state bonding bill, House Bill 1431. They passed that bill. It's at $680 million is the total aspect of that bill. Part of that is they brought that down a little bit because they knew some of this federal money was coming forward. So that one looks like it's going to pass both sides fairly easy. Other than that, we're just watching a lot of conference committee meetings right now. Anything from our chairs, Mr. Veen, Mr. Weber?
Anything to add, Mr. Veen, Mr. Weber? Excellent. We're moving right along. Mr. Weber? Yes,
thanks, John.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, John. Okay, last thing on the agenda, item 3.2, COVID update. All the information's there for your review and perusal. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Weigel, second by Weber. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.